Okay, we are back for the second hour of the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski. I'm here with Bill McIntyre from Mount Shasta, California, as well as my guest from Rome, Italy, Leo Zagami. He's a high-ranking Illuminati Grandmaster who gained considerable attention in the conspiracy research community between 2006 and 2008 as a defector and a whistleblower, trying to tell us all about the New World Order and the Jesuit connections, the Vatican connections, etc. He published his revelations first on Illuminati Confessions, now has a book out that's in Italian and is really a bestseller there as well as in Japan. Sold 20,000 copies so far, and that's a lot these days. And Leo's trying to get that book printed in English. Leo, how are you from Rome today?
Yeah, very well. You hear me well? How is the signal?
Oh, good. Fantastic. Good.
Perfect. Okay, well, in Japan, I actually been publishing, bestsellers since 2009. I'm actually coming out in 10 days with my fifth book. And the one that came out in Italy basically is part of a trilogy, which in Japan, with the next release, is basically complete. So Japan is ahead of all the nations on Earth on the information about the Vatican, the hidden government, and all the plots that are behind it, because since 2009, when I went there, we made like a special agreement, and we arrived to the conclusions that I personally myself needed to have at least some kind of defense behind the scenes, somebody that could defend me. First of all, I will introduce myself, of course, Greg, because many people don't know me, because as you said to me prior to the show, this is a new setup, a new radio station. I welcome all the listeners to listen to this show with Greg Szymanski, who is a great interviewer, and which I have had the possibility and the honor to work in the past when I, at the beginning, came out of this New World Order scenario in 2006. As you remember, Greg, I came out with a small blog I think it was around October 2006 when I published, September, October, when I actually published my first stuff. It didn't take really much time until I got to have the attentions of big people like David Icke, who put me on their website, giving me a lot of attention worldwide, and the same with Greg Szymanski, who of course was the first one to bring me on a radio show discussing these topics. So I thank you again, Greg, for that possibility. Since then, obviously, many things have happened, many things have changed. We collaborated very closely with Greg between 2006 and 2008 when I decided to make these confessions freely available across the net to, in a way, like we said before, for those people who know my story, defend my life, meaning that I was threatened with my life at the beginning of the summer of 2006, and I arrived to the conclusion that the only way to save my family, my life was just to bring out this truth that I knew with these documents and make really this a story that was well known, at least amongst the alternative media, because of course at the beginning it was only the alternative media who gave me any kind of interest, and thanks to people like Greg also that were taking on board the difficulties that means bringing a character or a figure like me on the air. The criticism also that both me and Greg had at certain times. What happened, I would say, was that between 2006 and 2008, I brought out a lot of information. This information about the Vatican, about the collaboration between them and the Zionists. And since the Second Vatican Council, this collaboration has become a one-world government plot and scenario that is all over and all around us and visible for all our eyes to see.
Now, Leo, you got this information. Tell the people a little bit about your family background.
Yes.
How you were an insider working as a child. You were on Vatican Radio as a child. Go ahead, tell us a little bit.
Yes, I started very early in my life. I come from a particular family. I was born in 1970, March 1970. And basically, 42 years ago, I started this life in a family, which was not a normal family. It if we want to take it by the American point of view. It was an aristocratic setup here in Europe, with my mother coming from Scottish-English aristocracy, Scottish aristocracy especially connected to the Lion family, the family of the Queen Mother of England, from Lord and Lady Strathmore, and then from my father's side, instead, the Gregorio family of the Marchese di Poggio Gregorio, Prince of Sant'Elia, and the Zagami family, which is also an important, prominent family in Sicilian economics, due to also some big enterprises they have. Of a legal nature, of course, because both my grandparents from Sicily were from a scenario which is not the scenario of the lower realms where you have those mafia scenarios. No, I would say that in The Godfather Part 3 you briefly see the truth when you see the figure of the prince behind the curtains appearing at one point. In Sicily, of course, the aristocracy is connected to the Vatican, and of course the same was for the Lion family, and so for my mother's family that comes from a Catholic tradition in Scotland. That, in any case, though, welcomed, as we know, many centuries ago, the Knights Templars, and sort of protected them, and they well, of course, there were also families that were heavily involved with the Knights Templars already, so it became like a Knights Templar base. Scotland, as we know very well, also with the Roslin Chapel, with my friends, the Sinclair family, and so who we are basically what you will define as the elite. So it's very difficult sometimes to bring out this information in my position. I noticed this even recently, Greg. I was doing a conference in Mestre, near Venice, not so long ago, presenting my book, because, as I said, for the first time I managed to finally release a book in Italy, and in the matter of less than a week it was already a bestseller, and it's number 3 on the most sold list of Macro Librarsi, which is one of the key distributors of books in Italy. So it's doing very, very well, this book now in Italy. What does that mean, though, for me? It means that my story finally gets heard also here in Italy, where, let's say, they kind of started to learn about my story only in the last 2 or 3 years since I moved back here. And you knew also that I was living for a long time in Norway, and also before that in England. So I lived for 15 years abroad, working as a sort of secret agent of the Monte Carlo Lodge, with special missions from Opus Dei or other organizations, Freemasonry, infiltrating all kinds of organizations, working within the secret society realm, better known to the people as the Illuminati. This is more or less, I think I did a brief description that can fit for this show. What do you think, Greg? I tried to condense it.
I think that's perfect. I think people are starting to get an idea of who you are, and we will be going. Let me see. We got a few minutes here about 2 minutes before the break, but yeah, that tells us basically who you are, Leo. I wanted to ask you though. Remember when we were arguing a little bit, and I think to say it simply, what happened was you said you were on the good side of the Illuminati or something, and I said I only think there's a bad side. And since I've reconsidered, but can you explain that to me so that we can?
Okay. Basically what happened was this. As I said, from 2006 to 2008 I came out with my revelations. This situation really became increasingly difficult for me on my own. I was obviously a lot of threats on my life, but not only that. At one point, as you know, my now ex-wife walked out on me, but getting me accused of espionage from the Norwegian government. I, at that point, was arrested for espionage a couple of times. It's a bit of a long story now to
Leo, why don't we do this? We're going to take a break, so you hold your thoughts there. We'll come back in 3 minutes with Leo Zagami.
Of course, sure.
Okay.
Why do we never get an answer when we're knocking at the door?
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal. We're back with Leo Zagami. He's telling us now about, Leo, just before we get back into your story, just try to tell the American people what the Illuminati is all about and what their plan is.
Well, the plan of the Illuminati is obvious and in front of our eyes. Technocratic government led by a scenario which supposedly is spiritual, but is nothing but spiritual, and that is the perennial religions, the key religions of the Abrahamic faith that collaborate within a sort of scenario where oppression in the end is the result. And the Illuminati represents a secret society network that links all these religions with one centralized power of evil. And this centralized power of evil is both in Jerusalem and Rome. And the people who represent it are the Academy of the Illuminati, of Giuliano di Bernardo, one of the biggest exponents, who is the key bridge between Jerusalem and Rome. And then you have the Masonic bodies, of course, that follow this corrupt establishment, and they are connected to the Opus Dei. The Opus Dei is the driving force, also one of the driving forces of the Illuminati. And it's now the primal economic and also spiritual force within the Vatican. They have basically taken over the Jesuit position, though the Jesuits have not really given completely up. They are just now trying to blend in a sort of camouflage situation in which they are proposing themselves again. In my first book that is being published, I describe how, while I'm interviewing a Grand Master, a Knights Templar Grand Master, he tells me about how the Jesuits now have transformed themselves in the Araldi del Vangelo. Have you ever heard of them?
No, go ahead, tell me.
Well, the Araldi del Vangelo is a new order that was recognized officially by the Vatican around 10 years ago, and I think now 11 years ago, by a guy founded, a Brazilian guy called João Cunhamillo, of Italian origins. Okay? Now, if you go and look, and I invite all the researchers into the history of the Araldi del Vangelo, you will understand why this order is really becoming the new Jesuit shield, but the most important one and the key one for this next millennium. Even their look is military. They have these big boots, they have this fior da lì. Doesn't it remind you anything?
Yeah.
They have a dress which is basically half white and half brownish. And it's very interesting because what they have done, they are the only ones to have got this kind of recognition in such a short time from the Pope himself. And this recognition came with also a recognition of their Templar origins, because they claim to be also of the Knights Templar lineage. Now, all this confusion that might arise to the listener who sees that there is Knights Templars mentioned everywhere in Freemasonry, in the Catholic Church and elsewhere, well, this is a very complex, obviously, history behind Neo-Templarism that goes back to 1605, when there was a forgery made by the Jesuits to relaunch the Templar myth within Freemasonry, which they did very well, and to support the Stuart cause that was also backed by the Jesuits. When that faded, the Zionists took over. Well, first, obviously, before the Zionist cause was even established, the Jews took over the Scottish Rite gradually to establish then on the side B'nai B'rith, and with that rule also over the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. So the Jesuits found themselves secondary in some moments, but still they are very powerful with the Scottish Rite, for example, in the Latin countries, in South America, where they are completely linked with Freemasonry.
And how do these organizations, Leo, intersect with the American government, things like that, so people here understand that this is something America's on their target list?
Well, first of all, let me finish just for a second, the Araldi del Vangelo, because I think a lot of people who are listening to us, Greg, and I tell you, a lot of people are listening, also within the research community connected to the Truth Movement, and I would like to invite them to a more in detail analysis, to not generalize things too much, and to be able to then discern what's good and evil. This Araldi del Vangelo was founded on the 22nd, I think, of February of 2001, officially celebrated basically 10 years in 2011. And these people have taken over as the headquarters in Rome the Church of San Benedetto in Piscinula, also a very important church for the tradition of the Templars. The way they celebrate Mass is military. When they celebrate Mass, they kind of march with these boots. Tum, 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 tum. This to show you that the military background is what connects then, in the end, also the New World Order and the people in power all over the world. Also, when we go to the economic part that controls this New World Order, you were asking me just now, what is it really, no? How does it work? How they interconnect? Well, they interconnect thanks to the chivalric knighthoods that the Vatican bestows upon people, that the main ones are the Knights of Malta and the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, and at the same time, as we know, through these orders within the Catholic Church, and some of them with people who are not, of course, only a Catholic clergy, like the Opus Dei, for example. Now, all this power goes to manipulate governments, because once you convert a person like Tony Blair, submit him, make him a knight, whatever. The most powerful knighthood in general in the Catholic Church is very visible. If you go to Rome, you go to Via del Cavalieri del Santo Sepolcro. What is the street that crosses with the Cavalieri del Santo Sepolcro, my dear Greg? Let's see if you know that. And what is the building you find immediately after the building of the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre?
I can't remember, to be honest with you, Leo. I can't. You tell me.
It's in front of Borgo Santo Spirito.
Oh, okay, I know where that's at. Borgo Santo Spirito, that's Cinque, that's where the Jesuits are.
Sure. So basically, they're one in front of the other. The roads cross, symbolizing a perfect, union. And at that point, you understand who is really ruling the Vatican. When Licio Gelli is bestowed one of the highest titles in the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, you understand, obviously, who is ruling. And for those who don't know who Licio Gelli is, he was the worshipful master of the P2 Lodge. So nowadays, we went through a lot of criticism after my revelations between 2006 and 2008. So what I decided to do is just to go back into the fold at one point. When I was nearly close to kill myself after what happened in Norway, because I was there surrounded by the enemy. I had been arrested. I never saw my son ever again from 2008 till now. I don't even know where he is, or I don't even have any contact. This Muslim reality, which, as you know, I also lived with you, because on the air I was at that time living within a Muslim establishment. You remember?
I remember, and I remember interviewing you when you were getting arrested, I think. Go ahead.
So I got arrested again after that, when we were already not talking anymore. Why we were not talking anymore? Well, I wanted to be clear for the listeners that me and Greg, when I went to America, before I went to America, I received a letter from an important person who used to be, in the Monte Carlo Lodge setup. I understood certain things, and I understood that if I went back into the fold, grabbed my order back together, brought it out of that situation, or kind of establishing my independence, and at the same time being able to confront my enemy face to face.
All right, we are back on the Investigative Journal, and listen, America, don't be naive. I mean, the idea, what Leo's telling you is that you got to understand that you got to look back into Europe to see where the control is also established, as well as in our country, and to connect the dots between all these organizations, including the Vatican, including the Jesuits, including the Zionists, including rich bankers and this whole interconnected network, and Leo's trying to do the best job he can in a very short time to explain it to you. So go ahead, Leo.
Well, of course, it's a very short time, and that's why I have stopped from 2008 writing about it on the internet, because you can't really write about it in 1, 2, or 3 pages. I had to start doing books that were detailed with 500 pages. So I came out with books, and with the whole trilogy that is now coming out in Italy, it's 1,500 pages of material, documents, links. And still to this day, after the release of the book, which is number 3 on the most sold chart, still to this day, there is nobody within the Vatican or Freemasonry that has been able to say this document is not real, this accusation against this or this other guy is not real, because everything is backed by hard evidence in my books. So this is really getting, of course, increasingly dangerous for me. But for that reason, the books have already been made, deposited with the editors and with the publishers, and of course we are working here on a time frame which doesn't give us much time, because within the Catholic Church, this hierarchy that of course gets into America, but also from Jerusalem that is linked to the Vatican, this whole hierarchy is the one that is ruling your banks, is ruling your military system. Through these chivalric knighthoods, the great generals of the NSA, the great heads of the CIA, this and that, they're all in it, because they're all part of the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, the Knights of Malta, this knighthood, this other knighthood, this group, Brit, Bilderberg, whatever. But in the end, they all come in together because they all want to make money for a single project. And even if the Pope might sometimes seem opposed to one thing, he's simply playing rhetorics. He's not really being sincere about what he's saying, because he knows that the moment he's saying that thing is being implemented. So it's completely, and it's being implemented by his own people. Because when, for example, I just received a book which has the introduction of Introvigne. I have it here in front of me. After I'm going to pick it up during the break so I can tell you more about it. And his introduction, this is a book on exorcisms, and it's a book about an exorcist priest and the practices and evil in the world in the year 2012 and blah, blah, blah. Well, the introduction is completely hypocrite, because in my book I have demonstrated that, for example, Massimo Introvigne, who is, for the listeners who don't know him, the biggest exponent of the Jesuits in Cesnor. He's the guy who controls the Center for the Study of New Religious Groups, and he's the one who really advises police on the satanic groups and so on. And at the same time, he's in them. He's inside the Ordo Templi Orientis. And then he goes on this book and he criticizes sexual magic. And he says that Cagliostro was the way to perdition. I mean, here we are talking about people who do everything and the contrary of everything. And when you actually go in front of them and you confront them with this stuff, they tell you, oh, but we are just infiltrating the enemy. We have to know about Satan. Well, I mean, this is completely demented, you understand? So with my books, I am risking a lot here in Italy, and I tell you, Greg, I am risking a lot, because with my first book already, I'm having some very big reactions happening within Freemasonry, within the Vatican, and I have not even started yet, because the second book comes out in May. It's going to be even much more heavy and dense with information that is really bringing you directly to the hierarchy top part, with the names, the people involved, what they're doing, and what is happening. Now, America, of course, at the moment has not been publishing my books. We are as I told you, we are dealing with various proposals. Of course, people will say, why don't you just release it on the internet? No, my friends, it doesn't work that way. It's 1,500 pages. It needs to be translated. The cost of a translation are very big for a book of 1,500 pages, very detailed. It's not a New Age book. It's full of technical terms. It has to be checked 10 times before publishing. And so the work behind it also, I stopped in 2008 being public with my work because, as I told you, people, instead of helping me, were just trapping me in their own, you have to be a good Christian to tell the truth. So I believe you only if you believe the Bible. Religion has to be left aside, okay, in this game. We have to leave all religions aside. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, any religion. We have to objectively see the system of power for what it is. The religions are only used as systems of oppressions, all of them. So
I agree. And when you came to the States back then, explain what happened. You were trying to get a story across. We had parted ways for some reason because of you saying you were a part of the good Illuminati, and I was like, there's only bad, and maybe, you know, I was.
Well, it was very difficult. Yes, that's very difficult to understand also. The fact that you can go back into the fold, still be, like have your own secret societies, but work for the good. Why you have to have a secret society? Some of the listeners, of course, will say, well, my friends, if you want to protect my life, of course, we need a secret society. And I tell you, since I moved out of the Monte Carlo Lodge, the New World Order and all that, and I found myself alone, I was really in deep shit, because at that point I was I didn't have any support from anybody. And when I saw that even the closest friends were not able to help me, because in Norway I was basically alone and I didn't have the kind of important friendships I had in the rest of Europe, because there I sort of made a lot of enemies, you remember, and very powerful enemies, because even the Prime Minister accused me of espionage. I mean, I was really brought to have some serious problems. I mean, when you have an accusation of espionage and basically they arrest you and tell you that maybe you will have 15 years, when Anders Breivik killed so many people and he only has 20 years, well, you can imagine that you get a little bit pissed off, So I will say that I suffered a lot of injustice, and at one point I wanted to come back to my enemy. I wanted to really see my enemy in jail. And now, my friends, I tell you, this is going to shock you, Greg, but this is very good news for you. Go and listen to all the episodes of the Arctic Beacon, all of them, and all the people that I mentioned in the last years, since I came back to Italy from 2008 till now, have all been arrested. All of them. All of them, and we have evidence, proof, and documentation. You want the list? Okay. Rui Gabirro. You remember?
Yes, I remember Rui. All right.
Okay. Police operation of February of last year. They broke into a lodge in Benevento, and he cannot now come back into Italy. They arrested his cohorts here in Italy, and the accusation is mercenaries in Africa, illegal operations for building a mercenary army. Okay, one is gone.
Whatever happened to Ballestieri?
Ballestieri already is gone since December 2009. You want to know the operation, the details?
Right. Tell people who he was.
Okay. Comandante Giorgio Ballestieri still now is the director of the Rotary Club in New York. And a special one he is driving force of is the United Nations Rotary Club. I mean, the Rotary Club International Division within the United Nations. So the key Rotary Club of the New World Order. He's an ex-P2 member. He has now American citizenship. And he escaped. He had to escape. Because in the matter of less than a year and a half from coming back, I got arrested 27, this operation, of course, got arrested. I have nothing to do with it. But this operation got 26 people arrested, all mafiosi, 'ndrangheta. Ballestieri is being condemned for illegal trafficking of weapons, of drugs, of Chinese fake goods in the port of Gioia Tauro in the south of Italy. And so he escaped, and the fact he has two passports, he could use the American one, which has slightly different name. Instead of Giorgio Ballestieri, it's called Giorgio Hugo Ballestieri. So with that trick, he was able to escape. Okay? He went to Lebanon, and then he went to America. So now he's back in...
Leo, we're going to take another break. Hold that thought. We'll continue right there with Ballestieri when we return on the Investigative Journal. Okay, we're on our last segment here with Leo Zagami, our last 12 minutes with Leo. Of course, it's not enough time. We'll have him on again, don't worry, because we're just getting into the stuff again. It's been so many years, and a lot of new things happen. So, Leo, pick it up where you left off.
Well, basically, as I said, instead of being outside, shouting in the outside and not being able to intervene from the inside, now that I was back into the fold since 2008 to now, we managed to, thanks to people in the security, in the police and other institutions, to actually start to get these people arrested or at least criminally, accused of these crimes and put, on trial. And this happened more and more. I mean, I have other people, Celestino Zuccotti, Michela Mercenaro, who was the man priest who then turned woman with the permit of the Vatican, and he was in charge instead in the Vatican archives, and now he's a magician, black magician of the Illuminati, and celebrated, as we wrote at that time, the masses and Jerusalem and so on. I mean, all these people have been arrested, and even the temple that I talked about in one show, I don't know if it was with you, inside the secret temple inside the house of Michela Mercenaro, was actually found by the police when they went there by moving this secret compartment, opened up, and so that proved even what I said on an interview. So, I mean, we came really to, I invite all the listeners to go to pick up all the articles that Greg wrote in that period with my help between 2006 to 2008. Before I arrived back into America, and of course Greg got misled, but I think that anyone will get misled because to describe what goes on in a secret society, a network like the Illuminati, is very complex, and that's why I have written these books. So at least people understand all the politics that go within them and understand that it's not all bad people. There's also some good people. Very few, of course, very few compared to the majority. But we have to be able to not generalize, and we have to also be able to say, okay, this order is trying to do good, this other bad. Maybe this order, you can save these people, these other ones no. To do all this, you have to be in. You understand, Greg? Because they manipulate the power of the world. And Giorgio Ballestieri, in the recent 2 weeks, has made this cross of Michelangelo reappear in San Marino, together with all this art from Matisse, Rembrandt, Van Gogh. He gave his lawyer the possibility of showing the police where they were. They immediately confiscated everything. Why? Because Ballestieri is trying to get back into Italy. He's desperate. He can't. And he's accusing, he made this big 92-page document sent to the FBI, where he accused me, General Frank Bendhofer, which is an important guy in America. His grandfather, his family owns Pelican Pens. You know Pelican Pens? And basically, this Ballestieri accused him, who is a Jew, to be a Nazi, together with me, with the Marquise Caldirola, which you mentioned actually in one of your articles at that time when you talked about 9/11, because the whole thing was reconnected to 9/11. Why? Because, as I explained also in volume 2 of my book, there is evidence that Ballestieri was directly involved with the 9/11 situation and what happened there with the hidden government sending down the Twin Towers, as we all know, and the fake attack on the Pentagon and so on. I mean, this whole operation was within what we call the strategy of tension that, as you know, was experimented in Italy in the 70s. So this new strategy of tension made the American people who deal in weapons, who deal in war, make a lot of money. And the people like Dick Cheney and all these people, in the end, though, they are always protected by their cardinals in the Vatican. They always go towards the centralized power either of the Vatican or of Jerusalem, because then these two things match. And if you don't understand that they match and they work together in a one-world government scenario and plot, then you miss out on the whole tentacles that lead this world government. If you only take one stand and say, oh, only the Jesuits or only the Vatican or only the Zionists are the ones who are in control, then you actually serve the purpose of their disinformation, because they tend to always, the famous motto, no? Dividi et impera, divide and conquer. That is the motto on top. But on top, They're all together in it, and they continue to make intrigues, murders, business, and use the good part of society. Why? Because the good part of society at the moment simply doesn't react. The people are not all cohort of this new world order. Nobody wants that the technocrats put us a microchip and led us to the way of hell and the Antichrist in the real sense of the term. But what they do, they just shut an eye. They just know that if you start fighting the system, your bank account will be frozen, this other thing will happen. I mean, I had my bank account and everything frozen for a year and a half. Until February 2010. I know what it means to suffer because of these fuckers and the way they act. It's completely illegal. But that's why not many people have the courage to do what I did, to give up on a style of life. But at the same time, I decided also to become an author because I think that at least I need to have that little money to go on and have a decent life. I mean, I can't give up on Monte Carlo to then find myself with a bag in the street. You understand, Greg? I mean, it's pretty fair, no?
I agree with you. And, one of the things I wanted to ask you was this interconnection between your country, our country, Monte Carlo Lodge, how the secret societies here function in America along with those in Europe.
Well, Monte Carlo is a principality which is independent, and of course, like Liechtenstein, like Luxembourg, like Switzerland, these are places that hold a special status on the monetary union situation. On what the IMF has for us, it doesn't have for them. These are particular places where they have a particular status, as I said. They will never fall. Because they have so much money that is put there from all over the world and so many interests. So the Vatican has always had a strong hand on the Principality of Monaco because the Knights of Malta, and there is a long tradition there with the Principality of being very Catholic and so very subservient to the Pope. The Queen of England, of course, is also in a way subservient to the Christianity and so to the Pope in the end. But she has, a fair degree of independence. But in the end, the head of Christianity, even for the Protestant world, stays always the Pope. So, and that even if they don't visibly recognize it, in the end they always submit to it. Even the Pat Robertson, you understand, even these preachers in America, they are all in one way or another controlled by the Zionists and the Vatican. And when I went there in America in 2008, and these Zionist Christians who were claiming they were opposing the Vatican brought me into a situation with this Monique Armstrong, and then also there was the involvement at one point of that sister Carrie Burnell who came on your show. And these people seem to go from one worse thing to another worse thing and not really understanding that they were not free at all. They were just passing from one owner to another owner, but of the same situation. Because if you get controlled by the Knesset in Jerusalem, you are simply controlled also by the Vatican, who works in symbiosis with the Knesset in Jerusalem. So it's these two powers who really control the world. There is, of course, a third power now. There is a very strong one. It's China and Chinese Freemasonry and the Triads. Of course, this is a completely other ballgame, but they are already linked. They have a link with the Skull and Bones since the Opium Wars. Since the opium traffic, as you know, helped the birth of Skull and Bones, and then, of course, helped the birth of Yale University. So the secret societies linked to the Vatican made a deal with the Chinese secret societies. And that's why Macau, which is now being freed in the last 10 years and open to foreign market investors in the casino market, symbolizes really this union of power, And the money made in the casinos can really destabilize whole world scenario, especially the one made in Macau. And all this is connected with those bombs. It's too long story to talk about it today, which have been mentioned by David Wilcock, who's been obviously led astray also by Benjamin Fulford, who is a totally disinfo artist and agent working for the NSA, for the Chinese Freemasonry. And of course, in the end, he also becomes a puppet, and they try to make him do fictional wars on the internet where he basically talks rubbish all the time to get the truth movement to become even more confused. We have to stop all this, Greg. We have to definitely stop this. It was good to be back on the show with you today. I'm glad, and I hope that in the future we can make more clarity in all this. And I hope that my trilogy, my book, The Confessions of an Illuminato, will be able soon to arrive to the United States, so you can have even more and more clarity.
You know, Leo, give us the website as we go out here so people can read more about you.
Well, I don't have any more an official website. My own website has been taken by other people, and I don't really have, you can still go on leozagami.com, of course, but it's only a fan's website. It's not my own. You can find me either on Facebook, or you can find me generally speaking all over the internet.